On October 15, 2021, police responded to a distress call from an apartment complex on Oak Street. What they discovered inside would haunt them for years to come: the lifeless body of 32-year-old Ethan Reed, a beloved local high school teacher, lying in a pool of his own blood. The prime suspect? His girlfriend of 2 years, 29-year-old software engineer Olivia Rogan. As investigators delved deeper into the case, they uncovered a disturbing web of surveillance, manipulation, and escalating control that had ensnared Ethan in the months leading up to his death. Hidden cameras, meticulously placed throughout his apartment, told a silent tale of paranoia and obsession. Olivia Rogan's path to becoming the central figure in a tragic true crime story began long before she met Ethan Reed. Born in 1993 to Margaret and James Rogan, Olivia grew up in a middle-class suburb of Portland. From an early age, those close to the family noted Olivia's intense need for attention and validation. Margaret Rogan, in an interview following her daughter's arrest, reflected on Olivia's childhood. She was an exceptionally bright child, always at the top of her class, but she struggled to form lasting friendships. Margaret recalled, "I thought it was just shyness at first, but as she got older I noticed how possessive she could be of the few friends she did make. If they spent time with other children, Olivia would become sullen and withdrawn." This pattern continued into Olivia's teenage years. Her high school boyfriend, Alex Chen, later told investigators about Olivia's constant need to know his whereabouts. "She would call or text incessantly when we weren't together," he said. "If I didn't respond quickly enough, she'd show up wherever she thought I might be. At the time I thought it was just because she cared so much." Despite these interpersonal challenges, Olivia excelled academically. She graduated as valedictorian of her high school class and went on to study computer science at Stanford University. It was here that Olivia's controlling tendencies found a new outlet in the world of technology. Her college roommate, Sarah Jennings, remembered Olivia's fascination with coding and surveillance software. "She was brilliant at it," Sarah said, "but sometimes it felt like she was using her skills to keep tabs on everyone around her. She'd casually mention things about our classmates that she couldn't possibly have known without some kind of digital snooping." After graduating with honors, Olivia landed a prestigious job at a tech startup. Her colleagues described her as driven and meticulous, often working long hours to perfect her code. However, her personal life continued to be marked by tumultuous, short-lived relationships. Jason Tran, who dated Olivia for 6 months in 2019, described the relationship as intense and suffocating. "She wanted to know everything about my day, my thoughts, my plans," he said. "When I tried to set boundaries, she'd become angry or manipulative. It was exhausting." By the time Olivia moved back to Ashland in early 2020, accepting a remote position with her company, she had left a trail of broken relationships behind her. Yet those who knew her couldn't have predicted the dark turn her life would take when she met Ethan Reed. Ethan Reed's life stood in stark contrast to Olivia's tumultuous journey. Born in 1990 in Ashland, Ethan was the youngest of 3 children in a close-knit family. His older sister, Amanda Reed, described their childhood as idyllic. "We grew up surrounded by nature, spending our summers hiking in the mountains and our winters skiing." Ethan was always the peacemaker, the one who could make anyone laugh. From an early age, Ethan showed a passion for learning and a natural ability to connect with others. His high school English teacher, Mrs. Elaine Hoffman, remembered him fondly. Ethan had a way of bringing out the best in his classmates. He was patient, kind, and had an infectious enthusiasm for literature. "I always thought he'd make an excellent teacher someday." Mrs. Hoffman's prediction proved accurate. After graduating from the university with a degree in English literature, Ethan returned to his hometown to teach at Ashland High School. Ethan's personal life was characterized by steady, long-term relationships. His college girlfriend, Laura Simmons, remained a close friend even after their amicable breakup. "Ethan was always so balanced," she said. "He valued his independence, but was also incredibly loyal and supportive. We broke up because our career paths were taking us in different directions, but there was never any drama." The fateful meeting between Olivia Rogan and Ethan Reed occurred on a sunny Saturday afternoon in May 2020 at a local farmer's market. Olivia, still adjusting to life, had ventured out to explore her new surroundings. Ethan, a regular at the market, was picking up fresh produce for the week. Their eyes met across a display of organic apples, and Ethan, ever the friendly local, struck up a conversation about the best varieties for baking. Olivia, charmed by his easygoing nature and warm smile, found herself lingering at the stall far longer than she'd intended. As they chatted, they discovered a shared love of classic literature and hiking. Ethan, impressed by Olivia's quick wit and intelligence, suggested they meet up for a hike the following weekend. Olivia, feeling an instant connection, eagerly agreed. Their first date was a hike up to Grizzly Peak, offering breathtaking views of the Rogue Valley. Ethan's friend Mark later recalled, Ethan came back from that hike on cloud nine. He couldn't stop talking about how smart and funny Olivia was, how they'd talked for hours without a lull in the conversation. Over the next few weeks, Olivia and Ethan's relationship blossomed rapidly. They spent long evenings discussing books, sharing meals, and exploring the natural beauty of southern area. To those around them, they seemed like a perfect match. However, even in these early honeymoon days of their relationship, there were subtle signs of Olivia's possessive nature. Ethan's sister Amanda noticed that Olivia seemed to monopolize his time. She'd call or text constantly when they weren't together, and she always seemed to have a reason why Ethan couldn't join family gatherings without her. Ethan, blinded by the excitement of new love, brushed off these early red flags. When his friend Mark expressed concern about the intensity of the relationship, Ethan laughed it off. "She's just excited about us," he said. "It'll calm down once we're more settled." Little did Ethan know that this was just the beginning of a pattern that would gradually tighten around him, slowly cutting him off from the life he had built and the people who cared about him most. By the fall of 2020, Olivia had all but moved into Ethan's apartment. Despite him never officially asking her to live with him, she began to exert influence over every aspect of his daily life, from what he ate to how he spent his free time. Ethan's colleague and friend, fellow English teacher Jessica Lawson, noticed changes in his behavior at work. He started turning down invitations to after-school happy hours, something he'd always enjoyed before. When I asked him about it, he said Olivia wasn't comfortable with him being out late, Jessica recalled. It seemed odd, given that she knew most of us and had even joined us a few times. Olivia's control extended to Ethan's social media presence. Friends noticed that his usually active Facebook and Instagram accounts became sparse, with posts becoming infrequent and impersonal. When questioned, Ethan would brush it off, saying he was trying to be more private online. But it was Olivia's attempts to isolate Ethan from his family that raised the most alarm bells. Amanda Reed remembered a particularly disturbing incident during the 2020 holiday season. "We always have a big family Christmas at our parents' house," she said. But that year, Ethan called at the last minute to say he and Olivia couldn't make it. When I pressed him, he said Olivia wasn't feeling well and he needed to stay with her. But I could hear her in the background, sounding perfectly fine. Olivia employed a variety of emotional manipulation tactics to maintain her grip on Ethan. She would oscillate between lavishing him with affection and subjecting him to cold, silent treatments if he didn't comply with her wishes. Ethan's friend Mark recounted a camping trip they had planned for months. "The night before we were supposed to leave, Ethan called to cancel. He sounded so defeated. He said Olivia was upset he was going away without her, even though she'd been invited and had declined." As 2021 progressed, Olivia's behavior became more erratic. She began accusing Ethan of infidelity, despite having no evidence to support her claims. She would show up unannounced at the high school, ostensibly to bring Ethan lunch, but colleagues noted how she seemed to be scanning the room as if looking for signs of inappropriate behavior. Ethan's student Emma Chen later testified to a disturbing encounter. "Ms. Rogan came into our classroom during lunch break. Mr. Reed wasn't there, but she stayed anyway, asking us questions about him. It felt really weird and invasive." Despite the mounting evidence of Olivia's controlling behavior, Ethan remained committed to the relationship. Those close to him noted his increasing stress and anxiety, but he would deflect their concerns, often making excuses for Olivia's actions. His sister Amanda confronted him directly in the summer of 2021. "I told him I was worried, that this didn't seem like a healthy relationship," she said. But he just got defensive. He said I didn't understand Olivia, that she'd been hurt in the past and needed extra reassurance. He truly believed he could help her overcome her insecurities. As Olivia's paranoia and need for control reached new heights, she made a decision that would irreversibly alter the course of her relationship with Ethan and ultimately lead to its tragic conclusion. In late August 2021, while Ethan was away at a weekend teaching conference, Olivia took the drastic step of installing hidden cameras throughout his apartment. The idea had been brewing in Olivia's mind for weeks. Her background in software engineering made the technical aspects of the plan feasible, and her growing suspicions about Ethan's fidelity provided the justification she needed to overcome any moral qualms. Olivia meticulously planned the operation, purchasing small high-definition cameras disguised as everyday objects, a smoke detector, a phone charger, even a potted plant. She also set up sophisticated software that would allow her to access the feeds remotely from her laptop or phone. On the Friday afternoon that Ethan left for his conference, Olivia sprang into action. She had a key to his apartment, ostensibly for emergencies, which gave her unfettered access. Over the next several hours, she carefully placed cameras in the living room, kitchen, bedroom, and even the bathroom, ensuring every corner of Ethan's private space was under surveillance. With the cameras in place and the software running smoothly, Olivia left the apartment, her heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and guilt. She told herself that this was a necessary step, that it would allay her fears and allow her to trust Ethan completely. The first few days of monitoring proved uneventful. Olivia watched as Ethan went about his daily routines, grading papers, preparing lessons, chatting on the phone with his sister. But rather than easing her suspicions, the lack of incriminating evidence only fueled Olivia's paranoia. She began to obsess over minor details. Why did Ethan smile at that text message? Who was he waving to out the window? Olivia's colleague, David Cho, later recalled noticing changes in her behavior at work during this time. She seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone. I caught a glimpse of her screen once. It looked like a video feed, but she quickly closed it when she saw me looking. As the days turned into weeks, Olivia's obsession with the camera feeds grew. She began neglecting her work, her sleep suffered, and her interactions with Ethan became increasingly strained as she struggled to keep her secret. One evening, while reaching for a book on his shelf, Ethan noticed that several volumes were slightly out of place. He distinctly remembered organizing them just days before. In the bathroom, his toiletries seemed rearranged, though he couldn't pinpoint exactly how. More unsettling were the times he felt as if he was being watched. He'd be grading papers in the living room and suddenly feel a prickle on the back of his neck, as if someone's eyes were on him. But when he looked up, he was alone. Ethan's friend and fellow teacher, Jessica Lawson, recalled a conversation they had during this period. He mentioned feeling on edge in his own home, she said. He laughed it off, saying he was probably just stressed about work, but I could tell it was really bothering him. Olivia's behavior added to Ethan's growing discomfort. She began making comments about his daily activities that she shouldn't have known about. Once she mentioned in passing that she liked the new brand of coffee he'd bought, despite not having been to his apartment in days. Another time, she asked about a phone call he'd had with his mother, though he was certain he hadn't mentioned it to her. When Ethan would express confusion about these slip-ups, Olivia would quickly change the subject or provide vague explanations. He must have mentioned the coffee in passing, she'd say, or perhaps his mother had told her about the call. As his unease grew, Ethan found himself second-guessing his own memories and perceptions. Am I just being paranoid? He wondered. Is the stress of work getting to me? Despite his attempts to rationalize the strange occurrences, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. He began to pay closer attention to his surroundings, noting any changes or oddities in his apartment. He even considered confiding in his sister Amanda, but hesitated, worried that his suspicions might sound absurd or that he might be overreacting. The moment of revelation came on an October evening in 2021. Ethan had been grading papers late into the night, the soft glow of his laptop illuminating the living room. As he stretched and prepared to call it a night, his elbow knocked a small potted plant off the side table. The pot shattered on the hardwood floor, soil and ceramic shards scattering across the room. As Ethan knelt to clean up the mess, something caught his eye amidst the debris. A tiny lens, no bigger than a pencil eraser, glinted in the low light. His heart racing, Ethan carefully extracted the object from the soil. It was a miniature camera, expertly concealed within the plant's base. The discovery sent a chill down Ethan's spine. With trembling hands, he began a frantic search of his apartment. Over the next hour, he uncovered 5 more hidden cameras. In the smoke detector, a picture frame, even the shower head. The realization that his most private moments had been under surveillance was overwhelming. Ethan's mind reeled as he pieced together the implications. The strange comments Olivia had made, her uncanny knowledge of his daily activities, the feeling of being watched. It all suddenly made horrifying sense. The woman he had loved and trusted had violated his privacy in the most intimate way possible. In a daze, Ethan called the one person he knew he could trust implicitly, his sister Amanda. It was past midnight, but she answered on the second ring, immediately alert at the sound of distress in her brother's voice. "Ethan, what's wrong?" she asked, concern evident in her tone. Through a voice choked with emotion, Ethan recounted his discovery. Amanda listened in shocked silence, her initial disbelief quickly turning to anger on her brother's behalf. As Ethan's story unfolded, Amanda's protective instincts kicked in. "You need to get out of there," she insisted. "Pack a bag and come to my place. We'll figure this out together." But Ethan was torn. Part of him wanted to confront Olivia immediately, to demand answers and explanations. Another part was simply numb with betrayal, struggling to reconcile the woman he thought he knew with someone capable of such a gross invasion of privacy. In the end, it was Amanda's steady voice that guided his next actions. "Document everything," she advised. "Take pictures of the cameras. Save any recordings you can find. We'll go to the police in the morning." As the first light of dawn broke over Ashland, Ethan sat on his couch, surrounded by the dismantled remains of Olivia's surveillance network. His phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Good morning, babe. Sleep well?" The irony of her feigned normalcy was not lost on Ethan. With a deep breath, he typed out a response that would set in motion the final tragic act of their relationship. "We need to talk. Come over as soon as you can." The tension in Ethan's apartment was palpable. As Olivia arrived later that morning, she entered with her usual smile, leaning in for a kiss but froze when she saw Ethan's grim expression and the array of dismantled cameras on the coffee table. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then Olivia's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. "Ethan, I can explain," she began, her voice quavering. But Ethan, his voice low and controlled, cut her off. He spoke of trust betrayed, of the sanctity of privacy violated. With each word, Olivia seemed to shrink, her usual confidence evaporating in the face of her exposed deception. When Ethan finally fell silent, Olivia launched into a desperate justification of her actions. She spoke of her deep-seated insecurities, her fear of losing him, her conviction that if she could just prove to herself that he was faithful, she could finally relax into their relationship. Her words came out in a rush, pleading and explanatory. But Ethan remained unmoved. "I can't be with someone who would do this," he said firmly. "We're done, Olivia. I want you to leave." Olivia's demeanor changed in an instant. Her tears dried up, replaced by a cold, hard look. "You can't do this to me," she hissed. "We're perfect together. You're overreacting." As Ethan stood firm in his decision, Olivia's pleas turned to threats. She spoke of ruining his career, of telling his students and colleagues about embarrassing moments she'd captured on camera. When these threats failed to sway Ethan, she resorted to emotional manipulation, threatening self-harm if he left her. Throughout it all, Ethan remained resolute. Even as his heart broke at the sight of Olivia's desperation, he knew with a clarity that surprised him that there was no coming back from this betrayal. Finally, seeing that her words were having no effect, Olivia stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. Ethan sank onto the couch, emotionally exhausted. He thought the worst was over. He had no idea that Olivia's desperation was about to take a far more dangerous turn. The events of October 15th, 2021, would forever be etched in the memories of Ashland's residents. The day began like any other, with no indication of the tragedy that would unfold. Ethan, emotionally drained from the confrontation with Olivia, had called in sick to work. He spent the morning talking with his sister Amanda, making plans to file a police report about the hidden cameras. As evening approached, he decided to take a walk to clear his head, leaving his phone behind to avoid any desperate messages from Olivia. It was during this absence that Olivia made her final fatal return to Ethan's apartment. Neighbors would later report seeing her enter the building, her face set in a mask of determination. She used her key to let herself in, her mind racing with a mix of anger, desperation, and a twisted sense of righteous indignation. When Ethan returned home around 7 p.m., he found Olivia waiting for him in the darkened living room. The sight of her there, uninvited and unexpected, sent a jolt of fear through him. "Olivia, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice wary. Olivia's response was chilling in its calmness. "We're going to fix this, Ethan," she said. "You'll see that we belong together." What followed was a heated argument that quickly spiraled out of control. Olivia vacillated between pleading for another chance and lashing out with bitter accusations. Ethan, his patience exhausted, demanded that she leave immediately. It was then that Olivia's fragile control snapped. In a move that would shock even those who knew of her obsessive tendencies, she produced a kitchen knife she had taken from Ethan's own drawer. The next few moments were a blur of violence and terror. Ethan, caught off guard by the sudden escalation, tried to reason with Olivia, even as he backed away from the blade. But Olivia, beyond the reach of reason, lunged forward. In the struggle that ensued, Ethan's training as a former high school wrestler came into play. He managed to grapple with Olivia, trying to disarm her without causing harm. But in her frenzied state, Olivia's strength seemed superhuman. Neighbors would later report hearing shouts and the sound of breaking glass. One, concerned by the commotion, called 911, but help would arrive too late. By the time police broke down the door of Ethan's apartment, the tragic scene had already played out to its grim conclusion. They found Ethan on the floor with multiple stab wounds marking his body, the life already fading from his eyes. Olivia sat beside him, the bloody knife still clutched in her hand, her gaze vacant as she stared at what she had done. As paramedics rushed in, futilely attempting to save Ethan's life, Olivia offered no resistance when the police took her into custody. Her only words, repeated over and over like a mantra, were, "He was supposed to love me forever." The investigation, led by Detective Sarah Nguyen of the Ashland Police Department, quickly uncovered the full extent of Olivia's surveillance operation, revealing months of invasive monitoring. This digital trail, along with physical evidence from the crime scene and witness statements, painted a damning picture of obsession and premeditated violence. Ethan's family and friends were devastated. His sister Amanda, in particular, struggled with guilt. "I knew something was wrong," she said in a tearful interview. "I should have pushed harder, done more to get him away from her." As the investigation progressed, more details of Olivia's troubled past came to light. Former colleagues and ex-boyfriends came forward with stories of her controlling behavior and emotional manipulation. Her parents, shell-shocked by their daughter's actions, could only offer tearful apologies to Ethan's family. The district attorney presented a methodical case, walking the jury through the progression of Olivia's obsessive behavior. The recovered surveillance footage played a central role, starkly illustrating the invasion of Ethan's privacy. The defense didn't contest the basic facts of the case. Instead, they focused on Olivia's mental state, bringing in expert witnesses to testify about her history of attachment issues and borderline personality disorder. They argued that Olivia's actions were the result of a mental health crisis, not premeditated murder. Olivia herself took the stand, her testimony an unsettling mixture of remorse and rationalization. She spoke of her deep love for Ethan and her fear of abandonment, claiming that she never meant to hurt him. Her apparent lack of full comprehension of the gravity of her actions left many in the courtroom disturbed. After a 2-week trial and 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict on charges of first-degree murder. At the sentencing hearing, the judge delivered a scathing indictment of Olivia's actions before sentencing her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As Ashland slowly healed, the community was left to reflect on the nature of love, trust, and the human capacity for both compassion and cruelty. The case would be remembered, not just for its shocking conclusion, but as a catalyst for change and a somber reminder of the importance of recognizing and addressing toxic relationship dynamics before they escalate to tragedy.